Hi, everybody. Welcome to It's Busy. Here we go.
Hi, everybody. It's Bizzy. I'm so excited you guys are here. It is episode 596 with Mark Astor, Esquire. Hi, Mark.
Lizzie, I am so happy to be here with you. I got to tell you, we had a little bit of a chance to talk before we went live here. You are such a bundle of energy. I love it. You are just the cup of coffee I needed at, well, whatever time it is right now. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm honored that you have allowed me to join you. And I love to, I'm glad that we're a little informal, but I know that we're going to talk about something really serious. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to share what has become my mission and really my passion. And I know it is for you too. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Mark, when I heard about you, I had to say yes, because I feel as though the family is the total missing piece when it comes to recovery. So before I go any further, you guys, I want to tell you a little bit about Mark. Mark is a trailblazing legal advocate and the founder of mentalhealthaddiction.com. And he has over 25 years of experience, and he's dedicated his entire practice to the critical intersection between law, mental health, and addiction, making his firm the only U.S. solely focused on this life-saving work. Mark specializes in helping families navigate complex legal lifelines, including Baker Act, Marchman Act, and guardianship, transforming bureaucratic red tape into real life-saving outcomes for individuals in crisis. He is highly sought after for his deep legal insight, which he delivers with exceptional clarity and compassion. An influential voice in advocacy, Mark has been featured in training sessions for organizations like NAMI and Guardian Advocates, and has appeared on the Journey podcast. His mission is to show how law can be a powerful tool for hope and healing, fostering human resilience, and driving essential conversations around mental health reform and stigma. And so, you guys, before I started recording, I said to Mark, I have always thought that the missing link, again, is the family. And my biggest question to start off with is, Mark, why did you go into this field as an attorney?
Well, how much time do you have for me to tell you the story?
I'm ready. We're ready.
All right, let's go.
Let's go.
It's interesting, but before we came on, we talked about Dave Ehrenberg, who is Palm Beach County's former state attorney and also a good friend. I know he has really led the chance in cleaning up the industry here. But back in the 90s, not to age myself, I'm a little bit older than Dave, not much, but a little bit. I was a young assistant state attorney. In fact, I was an intern, a certified legal intern in 1993, when the state attorney was Barry Krischer, who I'm eternally grateful for giving me my start in the legal universe. And I was hired before I popped out of law school, and I was a full-time assistant state attorney from 1994 to 1999. In the 5 years I was there, I that's not true. I tried about 200 jury trials, everything from petty theft to capital murder. And when I got out of law school, I was, full of piss and vinegar, right? Let's lock them all up. But the mandate, even today, Lizzie, in the criminal system, and it's right there in black and white for everybody to read, is to punish first and rehabilitate second. And that's, I'm going into my 32nd year now of practice, and it's been that way as long as I've been around. And so, back in the 90s, we didn't have some of the diversionary courts that we now have in the criminal system. We now have drug court and mental health court and veterans court, which is great, right? If it's not a serious offense, we want to try and get these people out of the criminal system, get them the help they need so they don't keep coming back. And in the early 90s, when I was prosecutor, I noticed that we were getting the same people over and over and over again. I said, there's something not right here. Well, if you don't have a diversionary court to send them, eventually what happens is, we just have to lock them up as long as we can and keep them off the streets. That doesn't really help anybody, to be quite frank with you, because, back in the 90s, I really don't think the criminal justice system did a good job of, not just rehabilitating people, but frankly dealing with the behavioral health issue, which back then carried a significant stigma. And if you were doing bad things because, your brain had been kidnapped by substance use and mental illness, it was a choice you were making, right? As opposed to how we now look at it as a disease. So I was there for 5 years. I left in '99. Probably should have stayed a couple more years. It was the best job I ever had, at least until I started doing this work. Even though as a government lawyer, I didn't make a whole lot. I was living at home with my parents for the first 2 years, but I can't tell you how much I loved the job. You know, the last year there, I was in a felony trial division, and when you are prosecuting first and second degree felonies, and you either have somebody who's the victim of a violent crime or the family of a decedent, you can't unring the proverbial bell, but you can give them some closure. You can give them some justice. And I took that responsibility incredibly seriously. And when somebody needed locking up, I tried the case and I locked them up. But anyway, I left. I got married at 34. I got divorced at 35. So my life went into a bit of a tailspin. I did some defense work, made a lot more money. In fact, I made a lot more money, and I was completely miserable. In '04, I took a year off after I got divorced, moved up to DC. I worked on a presidential campaign where I became part of the candidate's legal team. I was also part of the advance team, so at least for the last 2 months of the campaign, I was either with the presidential candidate or the vice presidential candidate. I was also getting my master's in law, and it was a lot of fun. And it was an expensive year, but it was the year I needed. But the candidate I worked for didn't win, so I didn't get a job. So one of the reasons to work on a presidential campaign is because you get a job with the administration if your candidate wins. Well, mine didn't, so I had to come home. And I tried really hard not to practice law because by then I'd really lost my my passion for the practice of law. In 2010, after I pretty much lost my you-know-what on the '08 crash and made some very poor financial decisions, I ran off to California. I had a cousin who lived out there, and I had nothing going on here in Florida, either personally or professionally. So I went out to LA. I spent 3 years tripping the light fantastic. You know, I was very much attracted to the things that the superficial man is attracted to. I'll leave it at that. But I also had a friend out there, and he had been a public defender in Miami when I had been a prosecutor in Palm Beach. And he was getting ready to take the California bar exam for the third time. He said, "Why don't you take the bar out here, pass it, we'll open up a criminal defense firm, and we'll clean up." So I took the bar exam the first time. While he was taking it the third time, he passed and I didn't. So I took it again and I failed it again. And after 3 years there, after, I tripped enough fantastic, I ran out of money. So I had to come home. And I came back to Florida. I took one more shot at the California bar. I studied for it while I was here in Florida. And I flew back out, took the exam, came back, and failed it a third time. Although I did get within a percentage point, so I was doing better every time. And, friends and family were saying, "You're not supposed to be in California, your, for lack of a better word, destiny is in Florida." And how right they were, but I didn't know it at the time. And then I met somebody who basically changed the entire course of my life. So I got invited to a breakfast meeting where the presenter was a gentleman by the name of R. John Robbins. And R. John Robbins started a company here in Miami called How to Manage a Small Law Firm. And what they do is they teach lawyers the one thing that no law student, regardless of where they went to school, either Nova here in South Florida, where I went to, or Harvard, the one thing they don't teach lawyers is the business side of being a lawyer. I mean, they basically teach you just enough law to pass the bar exam and somehow fumble your way through maybe your first case. That's it. And he was presenting to a group of about 20, 25 lawyers, all about being an entrepreneurial lawyer. They looked, these guys looked at him like he had three heads. But I really related to that because I had a father that left school at 14 and a mother that left school at 16. And when they met, they tell me they met on a blind date. They both thought they were, staggeringly rich. And it turned out neither one of them had two nickels to rub together. And they spent their life together until my father passed away a number of years ago. And my dad built businesses, and some made money and some he lost his rear end on, and that was, what I was raised at. And my dad worked hard because he came from nothing, and so did my mother. My father's father was a tailor, and my mother's father was a barber. They came from nothing, and they built it together. So I really related to that, and I watched him speak, and I begged him for a job. And I spent a year working for this guy, and not only working for him, but watching, because he had members. There were other law firms that were members of How to Manage, and they were also learning how to run their businesses. And I spent a year there learning about being an entrepreneurial lawyer. But here's what I did not know when I first begged him for a job, and what I later came to learn, and what really was the key to changing everything in my life. How to Manage, at their very core, is a personal growth company for lawyers. And trust me, if there's ever a profession that needs personal growth, it's the legal profession. I mean, people ask me, are you in recovery? I am, but only from the legal profession. And so they believe financial growth has to be preceded by personal growth. And I realized two very, very important things when I was there. Number one, I'd failed to take responsibility, 100% responsibility for my life, both personally and professionally. It's why I had nobody special in my life, and why I was pretty much broke. When I was working there, I was living in my brother's spare room, sleeping on one of the kids' cots, because I didn't have any money. I had no credit either, so no one was going to rent me an apartment. Not that I could have paid the rent. And the second thing I realized was that I needed to find a bunch of people. I needed to have a mission. And if I could find a bunch of people that needed my help, and I could do it and do it better than anybody else, then I might have some luck. And I had a lot of close family members and friends who had these issues. Although, of course, since then, the cases have changed. But in February of 2016, with basically not a nickel to my name, I sat down in the local library here in Boca, on the one on Spanish River that's still there. Mm-hmm. They had free Wi-Fi and decent coffee. I got the cheapest cards Vistaprints ever made, and I ran around to treatment centers handing out my business card, telling people who I was. No one had ever heard of me. I hadn't practiced law in 5 years. I hadn't lived in the state in 3 years. And it took 14 months before anybody called me with a behavioral health case. So in the meantime, I took other kinds of cases because I had to pay my bills. I took criminal cases. I co-counseled a couple of family law cases with a friend of mine from law school. I represented a student athlete here in Florida who got himself in a bit of hot water with a female student. And I had just enough money to get a little small office, which I actually still have. We don't use it much because we're pretty much virtual and happened since COVID. And 11 months in, I lost my dad. And so I had just about enough money to pay for a funeral. And so it was a stressful time. And then 2 days after I buried him, I had a family member who fell off the proverbial wagon and ended up in the state's mental health system. She got herself Baker Acted, and I was there when it happened. So when I tell you the work is close and personal, it's close and personal. One of my best friends, lost his brother-in-law who committed suicide. Just recently, the sister-in-law died. I mean, I've been surrounded by it. I just didn't sit down and be quiet enough and listen and watch to realize it until, I had a little personal growth. And so in 2017, when I had the office, I met my now wife. So that part of my life took a little longer to take responsibility for. In fact, when I met her, I swore blind I would never get married again. And now we're coming up in January, will be our second anniversary. And I'm going to tell you, marrying her was the single best decision I've ever made. I couldn't have built this business without her. But my wife, besides being, frankly, a better entrepreneur than me, she's also a better lawyer than me. So she's quite brilliant in her own right. And I recognized that pretty early when I first met her. And she had a background in guardianship work, which is really a statute that was designed for elderly people. And she practiced up in Massachusetts when she lived up there with husband number one. And what we figured out was we could use guardianship to give families significantly more control over what is typically an out-of-control situation. Now, we didn't realize how valuable that was going to be until COVID came along and we legalized marijuana here in Florida, because the guardianship statute has been a very powerful tool for us in getting families significant control over, a loved one. The Baker Act came around because I told you it happened to my family member, and I was there when it happened. And during COVID, other lawyers started to call me and say, my client's been Baker Acted. My family member's been Baker Acted. Can you help me? Well, fast forward till 2025, I'm not going to pat myself on the back here, but I'm going to say I'm probably one of the state's leading experts on the Baker Act. I file about 200 cases every year to get people out of the Baker Act who shouldn't be there. I've always got 2 or 3 cases pending at any one time. We took on 2 cases over the weekend and 2 more this morning from people whose loved ones are stuck in Florida's broken, draconian mental health system. And because it happened to me, I've made a bit of a mission of it to fight the state on these really BS cases that are getting filed. But when it's used correctly, it's a powerful life-saving tool. And so if we use it correctly, and it can save lives. So, the first 7 years was just me and my wife working 8 days a week and 25 hours a day. And I would tell you that I've slowed down, but I haven't, because I took a call last night at 9 o'clock. I just can't help myself. It's just become such a passion of mine. And so, that's what we do. And there's now 14 people in the law firm. So my wife and I and 12 others, associates, paralegals, legal assistants. I mean, it's really quite amazing what we've built, and we're very excited about it. We had our best year ever, which meant that we helped more people than ever. And next year we're going to help even more people. So I don't know how long that took me to tell you, but that's my life story in a bit of a nutshell since 1999. Here we go.
Well, congratulations on everything. I'm so happy for you. Congratulations on your marriage. I'm sorry about your dad. Would you say, is it between 80 and 90% of people that are in prison are due to drugs and alcohol?
God, I'm not sure of all the stats, but I can tell you if they didn't have a drug issue when they went in, they probably do now. I mean, I have a client of mine that he's actually in recovery who spent a significant amount of time in federal custody. And I spent years going to see him. And I can tell you, he had way more access to drugs in prison than he did outside. He was in recovery outside, not so inside. So, I think that, I don't know statistics, I'm sure you're right. But yeah, it's rampant in the prisons. It really is.
And addiction's rampant right now. I mean, I just tried to help somebody get into treatment the other day, a place right down the street from here. I'm not going to name it, but they had already checked in 20 people, and it was a cash pay. It was not, they do not take insurance. And there were already 20 people in that one day. So before we go any further, tell my listeners what Baker Act means in layman terms, please.
Yeah, so the Baker Act is a statute. It's not necessarily unique to Florida. Every state has a version of the Baker Act, pretty much. It's called Baker because it's named after somebody whose last name was Baker. But it's basically Chapter 394 here in Florida. And it is a statute that allows the state of Florida to take custody of somebody, basically make them a ward of the state. The state now becomes their legal guardian when there is an allegation that as a result of some type of mental illness, they are in immediate danger to themselves. Typically, someone has either threatening suicide or has actually attempted, or there's an allegation that they were talking about it. I mean, you can get that, broad. But we're dealing with a mental health crisis. So that's what it is. Here's what it's not. It is not a treatment statute. So when people call us and they say, I want to Baker Act my loved one, and we ask them why, and they say, I want to get my loved one into treatment, my response is, then don't Baker Act them, because that's not what it's for. And if you want your rights as a parent to be terminated, then go ahead, knock yourself out. But then you're going to call me crying afterwards when you realize what you've just done. And that happens all the time. And it's not because people are ignorant, it's because they get really crappy advice from people who don't know what they're talking about. So it's the state's way of basically grabbing you. It's like an arrest, but worse. But much worse.
And there's so many people that are out there that have a loved one that is struggling and they don't know what to do, right? They're sitting here, their house is literally on fire. They are going to spend less time looking for a treatment center as they are going to be to buy a car, to buy maybe even their loved one a Christmas present with Christmas right around the corner. And you think about that, because people don't know what to do, and they do get crappy advice, as you said.
Yep.
And there's so many people today, especially since COVID, that are dealing with addiction, and they're going into treatment. They might not even have an alcohol or drug problem. They might just be dealing with other mental issues, and they're going into treatment with the same people that have a heroin addict or an alcohol problem, and they're all put together in the same place, correct?
Yeah, and it's interesting, Liz, when we first started doing this work in 2016, my primary focus was on alcohol and recreational drug use. And we still get those calls, but two things really dramatically shifted the kinds of cases that we get. One was COVID, and the other was the legalization of marijuana. And I would say now our cases are primarily driven by severe mental illness, which makes the cases clinically very challenging. It limits the number of facilities that really, I think, are appropriate for somebody, at least clinically appropriate. And as a result, it makes them legally challenging because we're having to, sometimes we're in two different courtrooms. I might be filing a Marchman Act, which is the statute that allows us to put somebody with a primary substance use disorder into treatment. We may also be filing for guardianship at the same time. And in the middle of all of this craziness, they get Baker Acted. So now we're running in potentially three different courtrooms. And, oh, by the way, maybe they get arrested. And so understanding how all of these things work together is really important. And, there's other lawyers out there who are sort of nipping at my heels, and none of them have the experience that we do. My wife wrote the book on how to use guardianship for a behavioral health issue. Okay. I've spent 20 years working in the criminal system on both sides of the courtroom, so I understand how all of these things work together. Now, if you get arrested, I'm not going to take your case. I'm going to refer you to a friend of mine who's probably, in my opinion, if I got arrested, he's who I would call. So I'll send you to him. But understanding how all of these things, all these statutes all work together is key and critical. Because if you can't get somebody out of the criminal system, if you can't get them out of the county jail, then it doesn't matter what you file, right? They're locked up. So how do you address that? Well, you have to understand how the criminal system works. And if you understand that, okay, now we can talk about what other kind of private civil action we can file, because we really don't want the state involved in this. We really don't, because they do a lousy job taking care of people. We want mom and dad making the decision, if possible, because they're much better situated to make that decision. So we got to get them that authority. But sometimes we got to get the state out of the way first.
And I know here in Florida, because I've talked to people and I know people personally, because people, you guys know I'm sober. I still go to 12-step meetings. And I know people that are brought to come to Florida with the thought that they're going to get fixed. They come from the north. They come from the south. I mean, they don't come from the south. They come from the west. And they come here and they get a free plane ticket to come to treatment in Florida, get detoxed. Then they get state-funded insurance because they say they live in Florida, even though they're paid taxes in a different state. They go to the treatment center. Then the money's up from the state. Now this person is honest. You don't get a plane ticket to go home, by the way, you guys. You get a plane ticket to come to Florida, but you don't get a plane ticket to go home. They get kicked out, and the person and the treatment centers will go use. If you go use, you can get tested again that you are positive for drugs, and maybe we'll give you another 7 days. But in between that, where do these people go? They're going to get picked up by the police, right? Especially in the cities we live in.
Yeah, I know way back when, and we talked about Dave, before the Sober Homes Task Force came in to play. I mean, that was a thing, right? Come down to Florida, sit on the beach and go into recovery, right? And there were a number of bad actors, many of whom Dave and the state attorney's office put into prison. And if they didn't, the feds did, right? Who were doing exactly that. I mean, a treatment center should not even be buying you a toothbrush. Okay, it's called patient brokering. They should not be buying you anything. There should be no financial incentive to come down here. And so if they are, run as fast as you can. That's not a facility you should be going to treatment at. And so, I hope it's not still going on. I wouldn't be surprised if it is. But, one of the things that we spend a lot of time doing, Liz, is going around to treatment centers and seeing who's running the show over there. Because if I haven't been to the facility, seen it, and met the clinical director, and you call me and ask me for a referral, I'm not going to give you the name of that place. And if you call me and ask me about a facility that I know bad things are going on, I'm going to tell you there's bad things going on there. And, I don't really, care what the facility thinks. I'm here to save your family. And if the treatment center don't like me, just too damn bad. I'm not here to serve their graces. I'm here to save someone's family. So, candidly, I can count on one hand the number of facilities I would refer anybody to in Florida. And they're all capable of handling a primary mental health case and or a primary substance use case. So that whittles it down straight away. And so, but yeah, I'm sure there's some shenanigans going on. There's just some people who just can't help themselves. But I think it's a whole lot better than it used to be. But if you go looking for a treatment center online, that's the risk that you take. Look, if you call my law firm and you want a referral for a treatment center, I'll give you one. You don't have to hire me to get it. If you need a referral for for someone, I've got 2 clinicians on staff who will help you to find the right facility, help you to get your insurance approved. I'll give you their phone numbers for free. So, don't go looking for what's online. I don't think that's a good place to go. But
No. And you guys, did you hear what I said earlier? I just want to reiterate what Mark's website is. It's mentalhealthaddiction.com, just so you guys realize.
mental health addiction law firm.com.
Yeah,
Sorry,
law firm.
my
Okay,
fault.
mental health addiction law firm. I'm going to make notes of that. Now, will you tell me in layman terms again? Okay, so when you have Baker acted and then Marchman Act, what are the differences?
Okay, so, and I'll try not to confuse you. You can actually initiate a Marchman Act the same way that a Baker Act can be initiated, right? Which usually involves the police. Okay, there are only two counties I've ever encountered here in Florida where they will Marchman Act you, right? Pretty much every state will Baker Act you. So the Marchman Act, think of the Marchman Act as typically a private action. It's going to be mom and dad filing against adult child. Okay. So what is the Marchman Act? Well, the Baker Act is for mental illness, and the Marchman Act is for primary substance use. So there has to be some type of substance. It could be marijuana, it could be some type of other recreational street drug. It could be alcohol. It could be a prescription medication that's being abused. But it's for a primary substance use disorder. And it basically allows us to put somebody into treatment for periods of up to 90 days. Okay, and we can repeat it. I mean, I had somebody under the Marchman Act for 2 years. I had a kid came in from Arkansas. What's neat about the Marchman Act is it also has a period of assessment. That period of assessment can be initiated on what they call an emergency ex parte basis. So we file our petition. The judge reviews it and says, you know what? Sounds like there's an emergency here. There's not going to be a hearing. We're not appointing a lawyer. We don't have time for any of that. And I'm going to send the cops out there right now to go get this person and take them to a place of safety, right, that I'm going to designate in the court order. Now, typically when that happens, at least down here in South Florida, I've got a retired cop on staff with a whole team of investigators. It's one of the things that we really, really wanted, and I modeled it after my time in the state attorney's office, where they have their own internal police force. So normally when somebody's out in the streets or missing, we'll go find them, then we call law enforcement because, while I have nothing but admiration and respect for our men and women that wear the uniform, they don't have time to go looking for these folks. They just don't have the resources. So we'll do it for them, and we'll make sure that things go smoothly if needed, if that's what the client wants. For the most part, things go smoothly down here at some of the other counties that are not following the law sometimes. So that's what's neat about it, because depending on the county, you can normally get it done the same day, right? I file at 9, we get a court order within a couple hours. The police go out there, we pick them up, and we get them off the streets. And now we can, move forward and have a hearing in front of the judge, and they get a lawyer and all that other fun stuff. But at least we can initiate it very, very quickly. And that can be a game changer, and a lifesaver.
And what about guardianship? Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so guardianship, which was traditionally used for elderly people, we've sort of modified it, tailored it to our behavioral health cases. Basically, I call it a time machine. When I do a CLE, so I'm a Florida Bar approved continuing education provider, so I get to lecture to some of the lawyers and some of the judges. I put up a photograph of the DeLorean from Back to the Future. Now, some of the young lawyers in the room look at me like, I don't know what that is. It looks like a car, but it's got a lot of funny stuff on it, right? So the DeLorean from Back to the Future was a time machine, and it allowed us to go back in time. So when somebody is 18 years of age here in Florida, they're considered an adult, and that means they get to make their own decisions about how they live their life, even if mom and dad don't like it. Well, if they're suffering from a behavioral health issue, and their brain has effectively been kidnapped, it may be that objectively those decisions are not particularly rational, especially if it's been going on for years and years and years. And so what we want to do is jump in that DeLorean and turn the clock back to when they were not 18 and could not make their own decisions. And so guardianship is a form of time machine, a legal time machine. And so we're going to go into court and say, Your Honor, we want you to remove their right to make medical and mental health decisions for themselves, and we want you to give it to the guardian. The guardian's going to be mom or dad or both, those who serve as co-guardians. And if they don't want to serve, we'll go and hire a professional guardian. But somebody else is going to step into those decision-making shoes And they're going to start making decisions for this person because they aren't capable of making ones that, well, are going to result in them saving themselves, because otherwise something tragic is going to happen here, or they'll just get locked up by the state, either through the criminal system or the mental health system. But somebody has to make the decision to save them, and mom and dad are going to do it. So we want to be able to make decisions about, them going to treatment, where they live, who they spend time with. We want access to their medical records. We want to make sure they take their medications if it's needed. Okay, we want to control their finances. So if there's resources, that they don't waste them or use them to fly away. We want to restrict their ability to travel, and we want to take away their driver's license. So it gives significant control over an out-of-control situation, right? But it's not for everybody. The Marchman Act is great. It's like a sports car, right? It gets you there quickly, but a pickup truck can do more. It's not quite as fast, but I could tow a boat with it, right? It has more teeth to it. So a lot of the time, we'll use the Marchman Act for speed and the guardianship for control. And together they work really, really well. They're powerful tools. But again, it depends what the family wants. What do you want? Do you just want the order to send them to treatment? Or do you want a lot more control than that? For some of these, young, individuals who are, mid-20s and, their brains have been damaged by the use of this legalized marijuana, and they're basically living in another universe. I mean, we need control, and we need to make sure one of the things that we need to make sure is they take their medications. Because you get Baker Acted and the facility wants to medicate you, they're not asking if you want to get medication. They're going to tell you. And if you don't like it, they'll be more than happy to stick a very large needle in your backside and render you catatonic for the next, 72 hours, and then some. So we may want to give that authority to mom and dad. So that if we need to forcibly medicate them, and I know that sounds draconian, but if we don't, state will do it for you. I mean, they'll get Baker Acted and the state will do it, and they won't ask for permission either.
It's so scary. I mean, in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s. I mean, I know people in their 40s, I know people in their 30s that just can't get out of this total, it's like literally a hamster wheel that they go in and out of treatment. They can't get better. Something horrible happens, and they end up going back to treatment again.
Liz, why do you think that is? Why do you think they go in and out of treatment?
Because I don't think people are actually getting better. I don't think they're there to get better. I think you have to want this. You have to want to be sober. I don't think anybody can make anybody else sober. As much as a mom loves a son, or a dad loves a son or a daughter, for that matter, and if they don't want it, they're not going to get better. And the treatment, I also believe, and you can tell me this, sorry for interrupting, is that they don't work with the whole entire family unit. So when someone is in treatment, it's great. You don't have any real life going on. You don't have any bills. You don't have the phone calls from creditors. You don't have your family members screaming at you, your loved ones screaming at you. You're locked up. And then you get out and nothing's really changed except for you've been dry for 28 days, maybe 7 days. If you're lucky, you get 90. I mean, to get 90 days, it's really hard, right? And then they go back and nobody knows. The family's like, wait, what? You want to go to meetings all the time? What? You want to do something different? And nobody knows what's going on because no one gets educated. So everybody's just kind of like, oh, okay. It's not like breaking your arm. They don't tell you when you go into treatment, it's going to maybe cost you, let's just say 38 to be shy, $38,000, you guys, by the way. And that's for a cash paying place, $38,000. And all you're getting, I believe, and I might be wrong, but is a good night's sleep because your loved one is locked up.
Yeah, let's talk about that because I think you bring up some good points. So I think there's a couple of reasons that people do not do well in treatment, and I'll preface this by saying, when I first started doing this work, I was of the opinion I'm going to save everybody. That is not realistic, and it's not the way the universe works because we have lost people that either the families called us, and then 6 months later we called them because they decided not to hire us, and we've lost somebody. Or we had somebody in treatment, they ran out, and before we could find them, took a hot dose, and we lost them. So we're not going to save everybody, but we can save a lot more than we are right now. So typically, treatment doesn't work for one of two reasons. Number one, the facility is not clinically appropriate. And number two, they did not stay long enough. They got to stay long enough. And I'll talk about what that looks like in a second, at least from where we come from. But, to your point, it's my opinion, based on speaking to a lot of mums over the years, that somebody who has a behavioral health issue is not capable of wanting to get better, because for the most part, they don't think there's anything wrong with them. They're in complete and utter denial. They're telling their parents to go see a doctor because there's nothing wrong with them, and the parents are losing their mind, right? Mom and dad, there's nothing wrong with me, right? So again, if they can't see it, and mom and dad can, then it's up to mom and dad to step up to the plate and make the commitment to save them. But by the time they get to us, they've been through the ringer. They've already tried treatment eight ways to Sunday, or they've tried to get them into treatment and they won't go, right? Or they won't stay, and they've spent a lot of money and they're exhausted, and I get it. And no one in the house is sleeping, and the whole family's falling apart. Mom and dad are talking about getting divorced. The siblings have all moved out because they can't stand to be around it. And so I get it. So from our world, and you're in recovery, so maybe you can either say yay or nay to this. I think we tell families that the recovery journey, because it's a journey, it's not a destination, right? Right. You don't go to treatment and then you're done, right? Because I heard you talk about it. Right? You still go to meetings. I know that you do, and my close friends that are in recovery still do.
Yeah.
Right. They do.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, they go to treatment for 30 days and they're getting better. It's all over. In fact, if you call me and tell me that you only want to put them to treatment for 30 days, I'm going to tell you that you're wasting your time and money, and I won't take your money or waste your time. I'm not the right lawyer for you. It's a year-long journey. It has to be. Okay. And here's what it looks like: 3 to 6 months in a clinically appropriate facility, a combination probably of residential and partial hospitalization, and med compliance, obviously, if it needs to be. Okay. And after that, what does it look like from then on? Well, got to work the program, 12 steps, going to meetings, getting a sponsor, being med compliant, continuing with some type of outpatient therapy, probably living in an appropriate recovery residence. Okay. At which point they can start to reintegrate into society, i.e. go back to work, at least maybe part-time. But if you can get them to that 1 year, there's a great chance they'll stay in recovery. But look, I don't have a magic pill or a magic wand. I promise you, if I could, I'd just wave it for you. That's not how it works. It's not like the movies where they go to bed and spend 3 days in a cold sweat and wake up and look, I'm fine, right? That doesn't happen in real life. Now, does that mean that somebody's not capable of going to treatment on a voluntary basis? Of course, some people go to treatment on a voluntary basis. Not everybody, not every family needs a lawyer, but a lot of families do. A lot of families need that ability, that legal right to make the decision to save their loved one, because their loved one isn't going to be able to make it. They just can't. And the days where we're like, oh, why is he choosing to live his life like that? Why is she choosing to live her life like that? They're gone. Nobody wants to live in insanity. It's just that if they don't know they're living in insanity, then somebody has to decide to save them. And hopefully you keep them in treatment long enough, the light bulb goes off. And it does go off, but it doesn't go like that. It's a slow progression. Recovery is like the stock market. It goes up, it goes down. It goes up, it goes down. They have good days, they have bad days. But, if you invest in the stock market and you stick it out long enough, the trajectory is upwards. That's recovery. Eventually, the good days start to outweigh the bad days, and then eventually the bad days just disappear. But it takes time. It really does. And that's the truth. And anybody who tells you otherwise is blowing smoke up your proverbial backside and not being honest with you. And at the risk of offending people who watch this, I'm going to tell you the truth. Because we're talking about saving your family and saving the person that is the most important thing to you other than your spouse, which is your child. And if people can't be honest about that, then shame on them. Shame on
Mark,
them.
I agree 100%. And you guys, if you reach out to Mark, what I love about him, and I've only known him for 40 minutes, is that literally you're educating people, which is what people need. There's no education about this. All they know is and now, they're just smoking a little weed. Okay, the weed that they're doing right now is not the weed I was doing in the 1980s.
Yes, I agree with you. Right, that's exactly what I tell them. Do not let them smoke weed. or chew
Yeah.
gummies or any of that stuff. Don't let them go to the gas station to buy kratom. It will damage their brain permanently. Don't
And
let them use it. I don't care if they have a card. It's dangerous. It's dangerous.
it's so dangerous. I think it's terrible. And everywhere you go, it smells like it anymore. It's insane. It's insane. I feel like the government, and I don't know what your political views are, but I feel like the government is trying to dumb down our society. So they just sit back and go, oh, sure, take care of us. We don't care. And the reality is we need to be awake. So how does the legal system itself need to change better in these crises?
Here's where I think that there's the big sort of gap, right? The gap is in the fact that really quality, clinically appropriate treatment is not available to everybody. So if you don't have insurance that covers this kind of treatment, or you don't have the financial resources to cash pay for it, you're going to end up in a county facility. And it's not that those folks don't care, because they do, but they're overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed. You know, just here in Delray, you got the Drug Abuse Foundation, right? They do good work. I know people that experience recovery in a DAF, but try getting a bed there. It's not easy. They're full. They're always full. And frankly, they get you in. They want to get you out. I mean, I send somebody for an assessment. They're held for 3 days. You go to DAF, you're in and out in 3 hours. And again, I'm not poo-pooing them. I'm just telling you the difference, right? But it's not fair for families who don't have those resources, because unfortunately, they do get the short end of the stick. And I said this to Dave, you know, there are some things that you cannot fix with money, but this is one that you potentially could, or at least make a very big difference. We need funding for really, really good treatment. That probably needs to come from Washington. Again, you know, politics aside, let Uncle Sam pay for it. We got money for other crap that we spend money on, bridges to nowhere and all that other rubbish. I think that mental health is going to be the number one crisis we face as a society, not just here in Florida, but all over the country.
Mike, it's all over the
People
world.
are losing their minds.
Yeah, all over the world. Look at what's happening in the UK, where you're from. I mean, literally all over the world, people are going crazy, and there's no place to send them. And I agree with you. I mean, the treatment centers, some of them are really good, but like some of them, the people that are working there just left the place a month ago, and now they got a job there. That's where these kids, they graduate from their 28 days. They get it maybe in 60 days, 90 days. Luckily, a year maybe somebody has that's working in the treatment center. I mean, it's just, and now the person with 90 days is going to teach. I understand that's how Bill Wilson did it, but that was way back when, and we weren't dealing with the pills and the drugs the way they are today. My last question for you is, what is your one piece of advice for a listener who is right now considering legal intervention for their loved one?
I think they have to sit down and decide if they're ready to make the commitment, right? And I tell families that in order to save a loved one, it requires you to make a commitment of 3 things: time, energy, and money, right? The time we talked about, it takes about a year, right? It's a year-long journey for things to really stick. And of course, afterwards, they have to continue to go, you know, I mean, I've got friends like you, Liz, that have been in recovery for 15, 20 years. They all go to a meeting at least once a week, and it doesn't matter if they're in Florida or in Puerto Rico. They're going to a meeting because it's what they do to maintain recovery. So time, energy, right? Because this can be an exhausting process dealing with, especially up front when we're running a full speed to get to court and get your loved one, you know, off of the streets. Problem is, by the time they get to us, they're already tired. And then money. I mean, unfortunately, I'm not able to work for free, although we have started doing, you know, giving back more to local charities that we're sponsoring events. And when it comes to the whole treatment thing, we're probably the cheapest part of the whole process, because good treatment is expensive, as you pointed out. But in order to get them there and keep them there, you're going to need us. You're going to need a court order to keep somebody there. So time, energy, and money is the commitment. And I think you have to have a very long think about if you're willing to make that commitment. Now, not every family's ready to do that. And if they're not, fine. I mean, it's a no judgment zone when you call me. I'm not here to judge you. I'm just here to give you some options. Maybe an intervention is a good way to go. I'm a big fan of interventions. And I don't mean an intervention that's done by somebody who spent 8 hours on a Zoom call and now they're sort of an interventionist. I've got 2 interventionists on staff. One's a forensic psychologist. The other one's a licensed clinical social worker. They've forgotten more about interventions than a lot of interventionists will ever know. And I'm not trying to poo-poo anybody here, but there's interventionists and there's interventionists, right? There's lawyers that do what I do and also do car accidents. and family law and whatever else. And there's lawyers like me who do this and only this. Experience matters.
It really
It
does.
matters.
And I know, because this is life or death. And I've buried enough friends, and I know a lot of people, and it doesn't matter what neighborhood they grew up in. Everybody's losing kids these days. They still are.
I know. It's heartbreaking. It really is. It really is. It's very, I don't, I tell families I don't like to have repeat business, because it means if something probably went wrong, right? And it doesn't, maybe they didn't stay long enough, or maybe we wanted to do an extension, the family didn't want to do it, or maybe things looked good and it turns out they weren't good. I mean, for whatever reason, we try to get it right the first time, and sometimes a relapse can be part of the recovery process.
Mm-hmm.
But sticking to it is the key component here, and I think one of the things that we've really tried to do over the years, Liz, is build a team that can provide that emotional support to a family, because the lawyers are sometimes in court, right? And they have paralegals that do all the writing for them, but they also have legal assistants. And the reason we have legal assistants is so that if the family needs to talk to somebody, they can call. I have an office administrator. She's been with us since, for many years now, and you can call and speak to her. There's typically always somebody that you can speak to, because families need support. They do. They need to know that they're not alone. And I promise you, if you're watching this, you are not alone. I've spoken to thousands and thousands of moms over the years. My wife jokes with me, I make them all cry. I don't mean to make them cry, but when you have a heart-to-heart and an emotional conversation with somebody, it's easy to shed a tear. It's easy to shed a tear.
It's really hard. And I know families that have mortgaged their houses, and even that's only for 28 days. I mean, and it truly takes time. It takes time. And I love that you mentioned that. It is a year at least. It's like planting a tree in your front yard. You're going to water it. You might give it Miracle-Gro, and you're going to take care of it. So it has amazing roots. And like we have our palm trees here that can bend in any weather. And that's what we want our people to be like. Once they get clean, we want them to be able to bend whichever way they have to, but not to pick up.
Yeah. I mean, look, like I said, we spent a lot of time researching different treatments. I know there's a program, I believe it's down in Miami. It's a year long. And it's religious based, so it's not for everybody. But I'm pretty sure if you meet their criteria, you can go there for free. So there are resources available. And like I said, I'll give them to you. I'm happily will make a referral. If you go on like YouTube, I've got 600 videos on YouTube and Vimeo and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. I make a video almost every single day and I put it out there. So families can get the information they need based on real cases, not garbage you read on the internet. Right? So they can get the information they need for free. And then they can decide if the legal route is the way to go. And if you call my office, you can speak to either Jacqueline or Brittany. They run our intake department, and you can speak to them for free. They're not lawyers, but I'll tell you, they know a lot about this stuff. And they can certainly give a family some options. And if you want to talk to a lawyer, sure, there's a small fee for that. But and if you hire us, you get the credit for it. So it's like a free consult. But there's a lot of information we can give you that you don't have to pay money for. And I'm happy to give it to families. I really am. That's what we're here for. We're here to serve.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's been such a pleasure. We're going to have to get together in real life. Again, you guys, Mark's website is mentalhealthaddictionlawfirm.com. Please reach out, you guys. All the information, by the way, is going to be in the description. So wherever if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching this on Apple or Spotify, you're going to find all the information right to the side of this podcast. Again, thank you so much, Mark. Have a wonderful holiday season.
You too, Liz.
And thanks for everything you're doing. And you guys, thanks for listening. Remember, please subscribe, and you will get my newsletter into your inbox every Friday. Until next time, everybody, remember, you are not alone. Take care.
Thanks for listening, and please subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast, or if you're watching me on YouTube, press subscribe. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.